Welcome everyone to this after church tea time. We're very pleased to be with you today. I'm accompanied with Kanisha and Diona for this live, and we're gonna discuss the service that just happened with the sermon by Jason and Chrissy about union through self-discovery. So yeah, let's begin right away. What were your thoughts and feelings overall about the sermon?
For me, I really loved just how much it aligned with what I was moving through this week. I kind of had this realization that we're always going to be going deeper with ourselves and learning who we are is kind of like a never ending process, but to understand yourself on a deeper level, to be able to really show up authentically and not show up in the way that you think society wants you to, or whatever group of people you're hanging out with. I really love that in this message, they really just gave us permission to really just be ourselves and to do that without judgment and without attachment. I think that's something that I've really learned to have to move through, is to do that without judgment or attachment, and recognize that as you do this inner work, like it's inevitable to change and to really become the best version of yourself.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. I feel like the general feeling that I got, especially coupled with the oracle card reading and the intro by Christine and Fabian, was that, sometimes you have like hardships and challenges, but like it's just right before the success, and it's just a march towards progress, and I love that, because obviously, like, I feel like it's always, the sermon is always linked to what, like, where we've lived throughout the week, and so it's always perfect to participate in this live discussions, because it helps unpack like all the hardships, I guess, and take a few steps back and realize that, oh, it was just God calling you deeper into yourself and into your calling. I like that you don't necessarily know what your calling is going to be, or maybe you feel called to public speaking, or going to space, or just like working your day job, and then it ends up being like your calling, and it ends up being your soul design, and you don't see that when you have a challenge, or when you're just like toiling away trying to make it work, to discover something, to discover yourself. So yeah, it's always good to have this, feel good sermons to help you, to comfort you that it's going to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I too have been moving through like the non-attachment piece, like not attaching to who I think I am or who I think I should be, just kind of surrendering to who God is shaping me into, right? Because I remember when I first like really committed to the journey, I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I have no idea who I am. And I started changing a lot. But what I've been noticing now recently is that it just feels natural. Like all of these changes that are happening in my life, it feels like I've always been this way. And so now when people are like, oh my gosh, you've changed so much, it's kind of like, really? Have I really? Like, it kind of feels like I've always been this way. And so yeah, it's one thing to embrace the change, but also recognize like the change is nothing to fear. Like who you are, God knows who you are way better than you could ever think. And so those changes are to help you kind of ease into who you've always been, and it does feel natural. It does feel easy once you kind of get into the flow of it. And then also, again, just not attaching to that, right? And being willing to continue to let it flow. Um, and I really like what Chrissy mentioned in the sermon about how, like, as soon as you think you know something, as soon as like you attach to knowing something, that's the moment you kind of close yourself off to learning what else God has in store for you. So you really have to approach it with an open kind of mindset. And so, yeah, those were some of my big takeaways there.
I definitely feel that, fact that we are always on a self-discovery journey, and that you don't have to close yourself off to always going deeper. I feel like a lot of the time when people begin the twin flame journey, and so their spiritual journey, they think that there's an end, that it's just going, oh, I'm going to get together, and then yeah, I'm gonna plateau, and that's it's the end of it. And Kanisha is fluffing. But no, it's definitely not the end. And that's why the spiritual journey goes through twin flames, is to make us realize through our challenges and through the mirroring and through the hard feelings that we can experience, that there's always deeper to go. Chrissy said it in the way that there's always, like, when you attain a certain peace, a certain foundation, know that there is always somewhere in life where you can get closer to God, basically. And that will be that way to perfect union. And I thought it was perfect because I was right before the sermon and during the sermon, I was seeing all these openings, all this joy that, oh, I get to discover more about myself, about my work, about my house. And it didn't feel like daunting, like, oh, I haven't finished growing, like I would have felt maybe a few years ago, or felt impatient, or maybe some people feel because they feel like they're not perfect yet. It felt like surrender, and it felt like joy, and I think that's the energy the sermon was giving. It's that through everything, through maybe discovering that you're on the autism spectrum, you can have more joy and more peace and feel good and better in yourself. And I thought this was really inspiring. I don't know how you felt about that, but I thought it was really like sensitive of them, and also I felt the relaxation and the peace that they found in figuring out who they were, because of this work. And it felt so good for them.
Yeah, that's been a very big impact on my life as well. For most people to know that Chrissy is my coach, and so being able to watch her and Jason explore this has really opened my eyes to recognizing and getting to know, like, my own child, who we believe is high functional autistic. And so as we've explored that, it's allowed us to get to know him on a deeper level and him understand himself on a deeper level as well. And that's really, I am not the best at this. This is something I'm personally working through. But sharing your journey and really allowing yourself to be open and vulnerable to share what it is that you're moving through. I think there's like this belief that, like, you have to be perfect in order to be able to share what you're moving through, or really have a grasp on your healing. But in truth, it's like once you share it, you're unpacking it, you're able to get a lot of support and feedback and just love in those spaces when you do share. And it also can help someone else on their journey. And then they also touched on like not feeling like that you need to have the house or the car or the perfect like twin flame union in order to be happy. It's really like knowing that your happiness is now, your good is now, you don't have to wait for it. And so I know with them sharing their story, I would just remember even asking God around the time that they had shared of like, I'm not understanding my child here, and I feel like I'm doing something wrong. There's something that I'm just not seeing or understanding. Please help me. And then probably about 2 or 3 days later, they shared their story, and Chrissy was sharing a lot of things that made them recognize these things. And I was like, wow, like you're explaining my child to me. So it was really relieving to have God move through others to be able to help me heal in my journey. And that's why it's so important to have this community, is because sometimes your next piece is coming from someone else that you weren't expecting it from. But that's really like the oneness and the one child of God. And so it's a really beautiful way of watching things unfold and receiving your next piece and knowing that you're never doing it alone.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I really like how sharing has been so emphasized, because like the both of you said, like it's a huge part of being your authentic self is that piece about sharing and allowing yourself to be vulnerable in that space. Um, and I know that's something that I struggle with too, but what I'm learning is that I have to, really allow God to flow through me, because like Kanisha was saying, you never know who your story can help. And if you're unwilling to share, you're kind of blocking God's, movement through you. And so it's just about being vulnerable and surrendering in that space, and speaking when God calls.
Absolutely. I think you touched on something that reminds me of a part where they said that it's only the resistance to healing and to peace that blocks you. And I think it's really important to understand that you love others by loving yourself, loving God and loving yourself first. And that's something that I learned in a really deep way this week, is that by being myself, by doing things that felt natural to me, that I was always doing, I was able to give to other people. And just realizing that being myself, and so it being easy, was what gave love to people, in a sense, was so huge and so relaxing for me, because it's like, I guess to quote Jason, that you don't have to be a chameleon in your own life. You just have to be yourself. And usually, I know we talk a lot about like childhood wounds on these live discussions, but usually that's not how you were brought up. You were probably brought up doing some type of masking or some type of dishonest behavior to yourself and towards others. And so this work really brings you back into you. And so in so doing, you're going to, I feel, experience challenges, because you're thinking, and I was thinking that like just an hour ago, oh, what if what I do, who I am, is not enough, is not loved, is going to be mocked or going to be bullied because of that, and yeah, you just have to relax into the knowledge that no, actually, it's your divine self, and so why would your divine self be hated? It's what God loves, and that's how you give love to God, and in so doing, that's how you give love to others. And I think Chrissy just shared a comment about that. Yeah. We did move through lots of resistance to sharing at first, but we realized how helpful it was for us to see other autistics who shared, and that inspired us to do the same. If it helps just one person, it's worth it. We even started YouTube videos on our autism story to help others, and it's very healing. And I think that's beautiful. And it gets me back to a class that I watched a few days ago, I think. And Jeff was saying, I think it's Wednesday, 1 p.m. class 72. And Jeff was saying, everyone really just wants to receive God. So when you give that to them in a simple way, at a level that they can understand, they will love you and bless you for it. And so you can give God in very, very simple ways. It doesn't have to be the theory of twin flames, of spirituality. It doesn't have to be grand gestures and public speeches. It can just be you. And because you are divine, like you're naturally giving to others. And when you realize that and keep on exploring that, it transforms your life, basically. And it transforms the life of others. And so, yeah, I mean, congratulations to Jason and Christy, because I didn't even know that they were sharing videos on autism, but it's like by being themselves and sharing, like they're building this legacy for themselves. And it's already so inspiring to see, and inspiring us to do the same in our own way,
Absolutely. And I think that's the beauty of like being our authentic selves, is that it, like you said, it doesn't have to be this grand gesture or this grand speech. You're literally just being yourself on a day-to-day basis, sharing yourself. And it's just like taking one step in front of the other. The smallest thing can make, the largest impact. And I think when we try to hide ourselves or resist being our true authentic self, that's when it gets hard, right? That's when it becomes difficult. But it's so easy. It's way more easy to just be ourselves and surrender to that.
Yeah, it's really allowing yourself to just like choose freedom instead of choosing to like be captive to these masks that we're wearing. And it also requires really healthy boundaries. That's something that I'm learning, as well as like allowing myself to be authentic requires just like boundaries to those who expect me to continue to show up the way that they knew me or knew of how I was showing up. And they had Chrissy and Jason even mentioned, like that will really start to show you like who is there for you authentically and who is not. And that is also going to require a deep level of non-attachment, because that sometimes requires you to let go of people who no longer align with you. They just aligned with that part of you that was masking or just trying to align just to fit in. And it's very uncomfortable and very taxing and draining when we hold on to those connections, and recognizing that connections should equally give to you. And so as you get clear on like who you are, you'll realize that like you'll have relationships that are very energizing and very loving and just feel very compassionate and are always growing with you. And then the ones who aren't, you just, they kind of vibe out of your life, or you just kind of keep a really healthy boundary and you see them and God gives you that time. But it's a really wonderful way to start living your life instead of doing it the way you think that you're supposed to be doing it. It's getting clear on, is this an obligation or is this something I truly desire?
I think it's gonna help as well in claiming that easy life, I guess, because you're gonna feel energized a lot of the time, And so, yeah, it's gonna give back to you, and you're gonna feel energized in doing other things and discovering yourself even more, and you're gonna grow. It's like a virtuous cycle. And yeah, I think it's really important, as you said, to have these boundaries. But I'm curious, like Chrissy and Jason and Chrissy, they shared about autism and their journey with it. I see that Valentina is also like exploring that. She commented by saying, I recently went to an autism meetup group in Glasgow. And it was the first time and it was very healing. And so I'm just curious to see, like, for you, like, what is a part of your life where you're discovering yourself deeper at the moment? If that's okay to share.
Yeah, for me, it's discovering a deeper level of like that God has created me to be a leader. That's something that I've always shied away from, or like I was always annoyed by it when I would be put into leadership by my class members or a teacher. I'd be like, what makes you think that's a good idea? Like I just never trusted it. But the more that I've learned about myself and really gotten clear on my skills and where my strong suit is, it definitely is in leadership. And the more that I embrace my divinity and my power, the more it becomes natural and easy for me to lead and to also lead myself. That's been a big one. I think that's why I struggled so much in this space of feeling like I couldn't lead, is because I wasn't actually leading myself. And so Chrissy talked about like places where you're not willing to change. And that was one of the places that I really had to sit with myself and be like, am I going to change here and allow myself to lead myself into the life that I desire and allow God to lead me? Or am I going to continue to sit in hell? And that wasn't an option. So I made a choice to change there. But yeah, the more that I've really embraced that, the more opportunities I've been given to lead and been very successful at it. And I've learned a lot about myself in those processes. And it's also helping me lead my family and lead myself into, again, just the life that I desire. And trusting myself is a big one, really trusting my intuition and my instincts and following where God's leading me and trusting him. But yeah, that's for me, that's where I'm currently healing deeper.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think this is a great question. I think for me, leadership also, and then also I've been kind of exploring myself being on the autism spectrum and kind of just thinking back to, my childhood and how I interact socially. And it's really just allowed me, how everyone in the community has opened up so much about this and shared about it. It's really allowed me to accept, the ways in which I'm similar. Um, and it's helping me to, yeah, just go deeper in that self-acceptance piece. And then also exploring how that relates to my life purpose and going deeper in that. And as I get to know myself and allow myself to share my authenticity, I'm learning that what I want to do in life is kind of shifting. I had this very straight, narrow path of this is what I'm going to do in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And now it's changing. And I'm learning that that's okay and that's a good thing. And it just helps to have this community and these teachings and have this support. It's really helped a lot. And I think I really like what Chrissy and Jason also said about how these teachings are so important to self-discovery because you need the tools to fall back on because we're so programmed to do things the way we were taught. And so it's easy to stay in that program. But you have to be willing to say no to the old program, say yes to the change, say yes to your authenticity. And so that's kind of what I've been learning. And like I said before, just having this community And hearing everybody else share about their personal journey has helped me to go deeper in my own. What about you, Yuri?
Yeah, beautiful. I love what you both shared about yourself. And for me, I guess it's kind of similar. It has a lot to do with power and claiming my power and being my authentic self and knowing that I can, I guess, lead and also create, and especially create change just by being myself. Because in the environment that I grew up in, you had to be tough, or it was cultural. It was also about like skin color, like, and I'm a kind of a soft-spoken person, and for many it's considered as weak and not against anything that my appearance would represent, and so I had to really claim that this is who I am. So to accept myself, for people to accept me, to find that acceptance with myself. And it brought up obviously a lot about self-discovery for me. And then realized that, in my workplace especially, just being kind and peaceful and being chill and being myself could bring about change and could bring that to others. And so that's something I'm going deeper with, but it's definitely something that I find very empowering and that gives me energy to do even more than I could ever imagine in every part of my life. And yeah, and it fills me with joy and happiness, and it's so much bigger than I could ever, dream about. And I very much am with you on this, Diona. So yeah, it brings up a lot of challenges, I guess, but I see this as a way to go deeper into love. Like, for example, and Kanisha talked about like discovering how her son was functioning. It was like, oh, you're discovering how to have a deeper relationship, human relationship with your kid. And it's so beautiful. And I think that in a sense, the challenge is ending for me and being healed. It's like, oh, I'm able to give so much more to myself and to others in that place, and that just feels good. So yeah, that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, you talked about how like we have those moments of like plateau, it feels like in our journey. Like I think we always have those, whether it's in healing or weight loss or your career, there's always those levels. But Jason even touched on how like there's nothing that you can't heal with a mirror exercise. And when you are feeling those plateaus, it's just a chance to commit deeper and go deeper in your persistence with this work. And that's something that I've experienced myself where I'm like, okay, like maybe this level, this new vortex that I'm going into requires just a little bit more commitment and consistency and persistence from myself. And so again, really having to lead yourself in that space and allowing yourself to like ask yourself what feels so uncomfortable about giving more to myself in this space. A lot of the times it's just the feeling of unworthiness and not feeling enough. And as you truly love yourself there, you recognize like, no, I'm worthy of that next level. I'm worthy of that peace and that place in my life. And for me, that was my relationship with my child was like, this feels really bad and I don't like feeling this way. And so instead of trying to change him, it was going within and really reflecting like how it was, what was bringing up for me and how I felt. And very quickly, God moved through who he needed to in order for me to be able to receive. And now our relationship is I'm going to get emotional. Our relationship is just really loving and peaceful, and we do have our moments still, but I'm able to keep my peace instead of like meeting him in his upset. And to have that change our lives so drastically and so quickly, it's just like it's what we would like recognize as a miracle, because it really felt like I was in this place where I had to learn not to judge myself or like shame myself, because I felt like I wasn't being a good mom, or like I wasn't understanding my child. But it was having to really partner with God in that space. And I surrender my kids to God all the time, because I'm like, God, they're truly your children. Like, you've just given me the opportunity to mother them in this lifetime, and I'm so grateful, but like, show me how to mother them in the way that you need me to, because my way is probably not going to work. And so it's really helped me learn how to even reparent myself, which is really beautiful, because that's something, like you said, always comes back to childhood, and having to recognize like, where did we pick this up from, and why do we continue these patterns? And that requires like deep reparenting and loving yourself on a level that you desire to have been loved by your parent. So yeah, it was, thank you, Chrissy and Jason, for sharing your story, because it's definitely like dramatically changed my relationship with my oldest child.
Yeah, that's so beautiful and powerful. And thank you for sharing that. And I feel like it really speaks to the power of this work and of these tools, and that is really a process, right? And like, I think it was Jason who was saying that you have to be okay with feeling into those bad feelings, and those things that you feel like you can't say out loud, just say those things, get it out, because holding it in is just going to help to create the same pattern. And so, yeah, like being willing to be honest, really truthfully honest with yourself, the good and the bad, is so key. And I appreciate you both for sharing your stories.
We appreciate you too. Yeah, when you were both talking, I was thinking of Christine's card reading. And it's funny because she talked about hopelessness and, walking through the desert. And that's a feeling bad. That's even an image that I had in my heart for the longest time, and that I had to heal again and again and again. And yeah, it's just like, it's funny because I thought about it, but I realized that your shirt, Kenisha, said safe. And hopelessness, like when you feel hopelessness, like the only way out is to have more trust in God and faith. And goes back to something that Chrissy said about like feeling that you're healing again and again, and you feel like it never changes, and then suddenly you feel like you've known yourself in a deeper way, and that you have a new foundation when you thought everything was breaking apart, but you were just broken open to this new reality. And it feels really emotional to realize that, yeah, okay, there's a desert, all right, that's how I feel. It's a bad feeling. I don't want to be in this place, but I can go up to the oasis, and I can definitely, get stronger, because I have already the strength in me. I have the strength of God. Like, as Shaleia would say, God is my strength. I have the strength from God, and knowing that even though like everything seems bad at the moment, that God would never abandon me or give me something that is too much for me, and I think it's so key sometimes to remember, like when I feel like, oh, I don't know if I can do that, God, I don't know if I can go deeper, I don't know if this challenge is too much, just remembering like the feeling that you get on the other side, and that it's supposed to be easy, just reminding yourself that and keeping the faith until you get there. I think it's really, really key. And I think we don't talk about that enough, but it's definitely like, these motivation speakers, when they talk about like, you gotta begin somewhere and the motivation comes along the way. I feel like it's kind of the same with healing. Like you gotta begin in faith with God and just remember like in the corner of your head that, okay, like it's gonna get better and it's gonna get easier and you're gonna have more joy from it. Yeah, I don't know how do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, like having faith is going to be massive on your journey. And I think sometimes I laugh at myself because what God says in the Bible is like, I only ask for you to have a mustard seed of faith, which is like this tiny little thing. And so sometimes I just have to just check myself and remind myself that like, I can trust God in this space. He's never going to abandon me. And so he always gives me like, as you build your relationship with God and really get to know God, you'll realize like he will prepare you ahead of time. Like, hey, you're about to go into this kind of thing. You may not see what it is yet, but like, no, you're headed into something. Jeff Shaleia calls it like the next set of like upsets. Like you can feel like you're being prepared for that. And so like, that's just something that I learned how to really trust God this last year. I've been working kind of like a 9-to-5 job, and I knew there were certain skills that I needed to receive in order to make me a better leader, to have better communication skills, that I was calling in. And then there came a point where I was like, I don't feel like this job no longer aligns with me, but I was holding on to it because I had an attachment to my coworkers. I loved the atmosphere of working with them. And I really loved the security and the steadiness of a paycheck. But I knew intentionally going into this job that it was only meant to moonlight as I was really building the foundation of my coaching business. And then there came a point where God's like, all right, like it's time to let it go. And I'm like, I don't want to. And so the day before the job was like, oh, my twin flame actually bought me the sweater. And I was like, oh, I love it. Like faith. Okay. Like there's a message from God here. So I had faith. And then the next day I kept seeing the number 333. And I was like, okay, I'm getting a message here. Like I'm being supported somehow or another. And then I had a conversation with my manager and we just realized that like this no longer aligned and didn't work for either one of us. And so I was let go. And at first I was emotional, but then when I really came home and sat with my feelings, I was like, no, this is actually the next step. It was my resistance to letting it go that feels really bad here. If I was being completely honest with myself, I would have just been like, this no longer aligns with me. It's time for me to let this go. I'm going to move forward in the next step of my journey. But because I had resistance and attachment, that's what felt bad about it. And once I moved through it, I actually felt deep relief. And I had faith and trust that like God had me taken care of. And I feel a lot of joy returning back to me, a lot of happiness returning back to me, just because I'm now filling that space with things that actually really align with me and that I actually desire to do, and recognize that I received everything that I needed from that job. It's just no longer needed anymore. So it required me to completely just trust that God is leading me, because that's what I asked him to do, is lead my life. And when we try to resist and like go the opposite of God, he was just like, all right, well, there'll just be some contrast, but we'll learn and we'll surrender and it'll be just fine. You'll be okay. But yeah, that was a big lesson I learned this week on what it really means to not have attachment to things and to trust the process and to have faith that you're always being led where you need to be, and that you're never going to be abandoned by God.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, like, because that's really what this journey is all about, just releasing resistance to our good. And I think Chrissy and Jason also touched on this as well, like, because our good is not something that we have to chase or go after or find at the finish line. It's literally right here with us. And all we have to do is release any sort of resistance to it. And I think I've been learning that as well. Like that's been a huge lesson for me in this past week, because I was moving through the upset of like feeling like I have to fix myself, feeling like I have to fix my surroundings. And what I had to realize is that I'm perfect as I am right now. And my surroundings are perfect as they are right now. And all I have to do is release resistance to that perfection and allow God to move. And there's nothing to fix, right? And every upset that I heal is just a way of going deeper into God's perfection. And it doesn't have to be this hard battle. I can simply let go of my resistance to God. So yeah.
Amen.
Well, I love that you mentioned that. I think a lot of the times when it gets hard, the first thing that you blame is yourself, thinking that you're bad or not enough. The fact that you said that, yeah, I'm perfection and I'm just going deeper. And those two are not mutually exclusive is so important to feel. Because like just accepting that in myself, I can feel a feeling of home, more than I could ever bring myself by trying to blame myself into being a better version of myself, it doesn't have to be that way. Actually, it's pretty scarring to do it that way. Better to heal before and then like you just go deeper, and it's natural, and it always gives back to you. I love that. I love that feeling. And for me, like I think it manifested in my life purpose a lot, because I was resisting a lot of new things that God was bringing to me. Maybe like I didn't think I had the power to be an Ascension coach, because I didn't think I could pay for it, or that I had the support to pay for it. I didn't see how it would all come together. And I was just feeling that so much of my life would be like breaking apart because of so much change, and I was feeling change. And I also thought that I had to do it a difficult way, like to basically kind of build an empire by myself. And then it was just a matter of months where every day God would show me, oh, actually, you're not alone in this place. And you're not alone in this place either. And you're not alone in this place either. And it's still showing me that, how one I am with life and with everyone else. And I think it's beautiful. And now that I know that, I can like just let myself be surprised every day, and I'm like, oh yeah, life is good. And a little bit more every day. And I think it's kind of beautiful.
Yeah, I love, like, when I thought about the first time that I came into the community and recognizing that like you have to heal in order to align in this place of love with your twin flame, I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I have to do so much healing and I have to do this in order to be with my twin flame. And now I'm in the space of life where I'm like, no, I give myself attention and I desire to heal in this place because I truly desire to be the best version of myself, because I deserve that. And so there's this difference in the energy that you come from based off of I'm doing it so I can be with my twin flame, and I'm doing it because I desire to be the best version of me for me. And really to be the best version of yourself for God. And so to be in that place now allows me to really just see the growth that's happened over the years, because it's now from a place of unconditional love instead of a place of trying to get something from outside of yourself. And that's really the beauty of this work. And my favorite thing is how Jason ended, like, I like myself. And I was like, yes, like, I love that. I love that for you. I love that for anyone who gets to that place of like, no, I genuinely like myself. And that's really the beauty of this work is really learning how to not only love yourself unconditionally, but really like who you are at the core, and like everything about the way that God created you. And as I'm looking, we have 3 beautiful Black women on the screen. I was like, wow, like one of the things that I had to work through as a Black woman was my hair. And when I would straighten my hair or do all these different things to my hair to fit in, and I finally get to this place in my life where I'm like, no, I like my natural curls. That's actually where I feel the most comfortable and the most myself, is when I leave my hair natural. And I never thought I would get to that place, but I finally got there by loving myself and recognizing all the places within me that I wasn't accepting, and being upset with God for making me that way. And as I learned to really accept myself that way, I was like, oh, I see myself the way God sees me now. And that is freeing in itself.
I didn't even think of self-discovery in that way, like exploring how I felt as a Black woman. But yeah, it makes sense. Actually, I just remembered that with Michaela in coaching session this week, we healed like, and about around my Blackness, I guess. And then she shared that eventually I told her that everyone chooses how they look for a certain reason before incarnating on Earth. So everything from the hair to skin color to we choose everything, and there's a reason for that. And I'm like, this made so much sense. And I was not born where I was born for nothing, and that's how it's such a big important part of myself, my culture. It's like, wow, you know. And yeah, as I get to love myself, I realize as well, I think while watching a TFS class, I realized that it's all about falling in love with God. And you have to take the time. Like, obviously we know that God is shy, so you wouldn't like get into bed with God like just yet. You have to get to know each other, and get to go on dates, metaphorically, but actually really go on dates like with yourself and with God. And you have to have conversations, and you have to have all these steps, and I thought about what it represented for me, and I was like, oh, maybe taking the time to take a bath and take care of my hair, really get some rest, give to people in that place, get that work done, say yes to that opportunity. And it was like, before I would have considered all these things as meaningless. I was like, God, why do I have to do all these things? Like, it feels like so adjacent, I guess, to what my purpose truly is. And God was like, no, actually, it's very much the center of your journey. So take the time to do all these things, even self-care. And it's surprisingly like the best way to fall in love with God, and you fall in love with yourself. And so all of it falls into place naturally. And yeah, it's just like so surprising, because you would never think about that at first. And I think Kanisha's children agree with me. You would never think about like loving yourself that way at first and falling in love with God that way. But yeah, it's not through self-sacrifice. It's about feeling good.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And self-care is a huge part of self-discovery and self-acceptance, because as you love yourself, it's easier to take care of yourself in that way. So yeah, I feel like for me personally, that's been a big part of the journey, is like taking care of myself. If that means putting more attention into my nails, putting more attention into like massages and going to the spa and doing my hair, like that stuff, like you said, Urine, like that stuff matters, and it's a big part of who we are and our life purpose.
It feels nice. Feels like kind of feels like we have reached a conclusion energetically. How do you feel about that? All right. Yeah, so if you feel complete, I think we can wrap this up for today. Thank you, ladies. This was an absolute pleasure to do this discussion with you. And thank you to everyone who watched us live and who's watching us from YouTube. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel to get more of these discussions and the Sunday services as well. And yeah, we wish you a great Sunday, a great day, whenever you're watching, and see you later. Bye-bye.